CodeMarvelous with ANR Black Hats, and you're watching Deckbuilding Derezzed. So on today's episode 2 of Deckbuilding Derezzed, we're going to be discussing a replicating perfection deck that I've been working on for a little while, along the same vein as my Argus deck in that it really punishes runs, and it's out to deal with keyhole and multiple access-based runners. The basic premise of it is using hostile infrastructure, Hokusai grids, and a few other cards to make it as difficult as possible for runners to trash any card. Hurts Kim, hurts Wizard, and really punishes multiple access. And since Keyhole's language says that it trashes cards, it also hurts Keyhole. So I'm not going to belabor it too much. It's a pretty neat deck. I've been playing it for a while. I love asset-based economy. I'm a Glacier player at heart, so let's get right down to it and let's take a look at the cards. So if you're going to discuss replicating perfection as an archetype of deck, we should first discuss what the ID actually does. It's a 45-15 Jinteki identity that says that the runner cannot start a run on a remote server until after they've made a run on a central server. What's important about this ID is that the run doesn't have to be successful, they just have to start it. So at its base, it's only attacks of one click. The way that you make this ID more impactful is by playing a lot of ice that has to be broken so that the runner can't just bounce off and then go run a remote. That's how you increase the tax. So it's going to cost money and a click just to visit a remote server and see what's there. So Jinteki Replicating Perfection has been piloted to very successful levels of competition, and the archetype that I've built here is really just a tweaking of the popular archetype, kind of the fun police deck that's been floating around for a while of, kind of Glacier-esque, lots of assets, and just slowly grind out a victory by taxing out the runner disproportionate to your economy. So let's start with our agendas. We have one 3-1 agenda, House of Knives, which gets 3 agenda counters when you score it, and each one of those agenda counters can be used during one run to deal 1 net damage. So what's neat about this card is that it synergizes with other cards in the archetype that we're building to create an increased net damage tax. The other thing I really like about House of Knives in this deck is after you've reached the point where the runner has stopped trashing your assets because they don't want to waste the clicks, you can often bluff a House of Knives as an unrezzed agenda and then fully score it the following turn. So it becomes a non-Glacier-esque agenda, right? A lot of times in Replicating Perfection in HB, you have a lot of 4-2s, 5-3s that the runner has no recourse, right? They know that it's an agenda. Whereas with House of Knives, I can bluff it outside of my scoring remote. They might ignore it, and I can get a free agenda that way. Our other 2-point agendas that we have 2 Fetal AIs and 2 Nisei MK IIs. So these are kind of par for the course for Jinteki. We're doing a net damage tax-based deck, so Fetal AIs are of course great. I didn't do 3 of them because I wanted 2 Niseis. Nisei being the 4-2 agenda that gets a counter on it that can end a run. I wanted this card because if I am behind or if I haven't been able to set up my full net damage rig, Nisei counters give me the ability to squeeze out the win and gives me that alternate avenue to victory. Fetal AI is the 5-2 agenda that when accessed, the runner not only has to pay 2 credits for it, but it does 2 net damage. This synergizes well with the other things we have going on in this deck, and if you bluff it as a Nisei by advancing it once instead of twice, sometimes they'll hit it with not enough money to steal it, or they'll hit it with only 1 card in hand if you've pinged them with a House of Knives or hit them with a Hokusai grid or a hostile infrastructure earlier in the turn. So you can actually set up a kill this way. I wouldn't say I get that kill very often, maybe 1 in every 10 games, but it is there. Our other agenda is our kind of more Glacier-esque agenda, the Future Perfect. In my opinion, one of the best 5-3s in the game. Has the side game where when it's accessed, when it's not installed, so out of archives, R&D, or HQ, you have to play the side game 0, 1, or 2 credits, and if the runner doesn't match you, they can't steal it. It's great, keeps your agenda density low. When you have the scoring window, it gets you 3 points, and it's just a fantastic agenda that's great for the RP Glacier archetype. So those are our agendas, pretty low, only 10 in the deck. The idea is get as many House of Knives scored early as you can to make running really bad. One of the things that's great about this deck is that the other pieces in this deck would lead the runner to believe that I have snares. So snare is illusionary in this deck, right? So they've got to be concerned. So if they're about to access a face down card and I ping them for two House of Knives to bring them down to 2 cards, you might get them to jack out because they think that the card that they're about to access is a snare, because why else would you ping them twice for House of Knives? So you're able to bluff in that way using the House of Knives. Once again, also it increases the tax that hostile infrastructure creates. So I'm going to go to assets next instead of ice because I feel like it's more important to understanding everything else that's in here. So if you look at the assets we have mostly money-based assets and taxing assets. Very similar to most RP archetypes, we're running 3 Sundew. It's a card that says that if the runner doesn't use their first click to run Sundew, they get 2 credits. You get 2 credits. So this is great because in RP, it is physically impossible for them to run Sundew turn 1 because they have to use their first click to run a central server. So you're always going to get that Sundew money. We also have mental health clinics. It's great for this deck, 1 credit a turn, no res cost, 3 to trash, which is nothing. And in addition to that, mental health clinic makes their hand size bigger, which makes ice like Komainu more impactful. So it's great for this deck. Pad campaigns, more assets, more things that the runner's gonna want to trash that's gonna cost them to feed the primary asset of this deck, which is hostile infrastructure. Hostile infrastructure is a 5 cost, 5 to trash asset that says that whenever the runner trashes a corp card, including hostile infrastructure, you do 1 net damage to them. This card is really powerful now that Order in Chaos has come out. If you look at this card, Wanton Destruction, that's 3 cards that they're trashing, would be 3 net damage from hostile infrastructure if they have 1 of them rezzed. If I have 2 or 3 of them rezzed, it could be a kill, right? If I flip over 2 of these and they have 4 cards in hand and they're going to Wanton, they're probably going to jack out because if they complete that Wanton run and use their clicks to trash my hand, they're going to die. They're going to flatline. In addition to that, Kim, who trashes operations out of hand, triggers hostile infrastructure. Imping any card triggers hostile infrastructure. Trashing my money assets triggers hostile infrastructure. Parasiting ice away triggers hostile infrastructure. So I'm really punishing the runner for getting rid of any of my cards, which is a focus of a lot of the runner decks that are really popular, not just in Anarch, but in other factions as well. So, the other thing that's nice about hostile infrastructure is it can act as account siphon protection in the early game. If somebody is using Eater to account siphon me, I can flip over a hostile infrastructure, drain my money, and now that account siphon is not worth it, and they've already used Eater so they can't access cards. Other assets, well not assets, but upgrades that we have are 3 Hokusai grids and 2 Ash. The Ash is kind of par for the course for replicating perfection. You know, if I have to run a central, you know, lose 3 credits from a toll booth or break a Komainu, then I have to run the remote, I get through the inexpensive remote, can't beat the Ash trace, have to trash the Ash, take a net damage from hostile infrastructure, and then go in again to try to steal the agenda, I might not have enough clicks to do all of this or have enough money to do all of this. So it just slows down the game. The other one is Hokusai Grid. Hokusai Grid, for those of you who maybe have never seen it before, is a 2 to res, 4 to trash upgrade that says that whenever there's a successful run on this server, do 1 net damage. It's a region, so there's a limit of 1 per server. But this has an interesting interaction with Keyhole. When you use Keyhole, it's a successful run, but you don't access any cards. Which means, if you make a Keyhole run, I get to do the net damage to you, and you don't have any opportunity to trash Hokusai Grid because you can't access cards. And if they do a normal run to trash it, they're going to get 1 from Hokusai Grid the turn that they come in, and 1 from hostile infrastructure when they trash the Hokusai. So we're just piling net damage onto the runner for trashing our assets. In addition to that, both of these cards interact with Keyhole. Hostile infrastructure interacts with the wording of Keyhole as well. Keyhole states that you don't access cards, you look at 3 cards and then trash 1. So you're trashing a corp card, you take 1 net damage. So that's the basic asset suite and upgrade suite that we have. From an operation standpoint, we have 2 celebrity gifts. We're very reliant on asset economy. It usually stays on the board once I have 1 to 2 hostiles rezzed. And then I have 2 enhanced login protocols, which is just an incredibly strong card for replicating perfection. For those of you who don't know, enhanced login protocol says that the first run that the runner makes without using a card effect costs an additional click. So if they need to run a remote to get into a scoring server, if they don't use run events for both runs, it costs them maybe 2 credits, or 2 clicks, I should say, for the central run, and then another click for the remote run. So it just taxes them out and makes it so that they can't do as much as they like with their turn. As far as ice is concerned, it's really kind of par for the course as far as replicating perfection, and you're not going to see a ton of surprises. We have 2 Elis. If they can't break them, it eats up clicks, which is very good for this deck and protecting our assets. 8 cost, Ice, Toll Booth, and Wall of Thorns have a lot of teeth. If they're on centrals, they really make those central runs taxing and make it so that they can't be ignored. Pups. Pup is the pop-up for Jinteki. You know, it's 1 cost. It's either 2 net damage or 2 credits they have to pay to get through. Komainu, which can help you get a flat line. If they face check and you have a House of Knives scored, it'll wipe out their hand, and then you hit the House of Knives counter and they die. Yagura, once again, taxing them out. And I have a lot of things in this deck, you'll notice, that are parasite fodder. Basically, these entire stack of ice here, these 8 pieces of ice, are all parasite fodder. I want them to be blown up because I'm getting more damage with hostile infrastructure. I also have 2 Tsurugi and 2 Lotus Field. They're my more glacier type, slow the runner down, tax them a lot of credits to protect maybe a remote. Or I usually like to put 1 Tsurugi on archives to make archives taxing without dedicating too much ice to it. Lotus Field usually goes on scoring servers. So that's the cards in the deck. Obviously, I have 3 Jackson Howards for the same reasons that you include Jackson Howards in every single deck. Some piloting ideas for this deck, things that you want to be aware of. You want to focus on icing up centrals really before you start putting out tons of assets if you can help it. If you have a runner that's really not going after your money assets at all, then by all means just start piling them into remotes. But usually savvy runners will really spend time in the early game trashing your money assets if they can. So really you want to wait until you have ice on all 3 remotes that have a little bit of teeth before you really start putting down your pad campaigns, your sundews, and your mental health clinics, so that they're less likely to dedicate the time and the money to getting rid of them. Also, in that regard, if you have somebody who's being very aggressive, who's just saying screw it and trashing everything, don't be afraid to dedicate, a Komainu to a pad campaign or a sundew or something that you really want to stay on the board so you have that consistent economy. You want to make sure that you do that. Also, frequently I put an Eli in front of a hostile infrastructure, once again to slow them down and disincentivize them from trashing it. Other piloting things, Nisei, I usually try to score 1 out as early as possible. If I can get both scored, I usually have the ability to lock the win because I can disrupt 2 runs on the remote, so I'm going to be able to get that future perfect. Get the Hokusai grids on centrals, whatever central they're focusing on, and then I try to put 1 Hokusai grid in the same server as hostile infrastructure so that I can make it so that trashing hostile infrastructure is 2 net damage instead of just 1. Other things, don't celebrity gift unless HQ is really protected. I use it. I usually hold them till later in the game when I have, a Wall of Thorns and a Toll Booth and a Komainu on HQ. And when I celebrity gift, it's like, yeah, look at these agendas that you can't really get in and steal, right? You don't want to celebrity gift when they can easily get in, or when you're holding a lot of agendas. Otherwise, if you've got just ice and junk in your hand, then obviously celebrity gift away. So that's basically the deck. Thank you very much for watching. I'm going to post the list in the comments below. Give me your feedback. I'm always looking to improve this deck. Once again, this is CodeMarvelous with ANR Black Hats. You can find us on Facebook, ANR Black Hats, and on our YouTube channel, which you're probably already on. You can find me at Self-Modifying Code. That's my personal blog where I put down my thoughts about Netrunner. Thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.